Hi guys and ladies, welcome back to episode number 10. My name is Disema Matiezi. On this episode, we're going to be talking about functions. Yes, we're talking about functions just for us to understand the functions that you can probably do and what type of functions there are there. There are different types of functions, and now I'm going to be grouping them into the number functions, the text functions, the date functions, and the Boolean functions. Those four different types. We can just understand why do we have to do functions. If you're asking yourself, if you're using SQL, you're using Power BI, or you're using Excel, when you press the equal sign, whatever comes through there, that formula thing that pops up, that is called a function, and we're going to be discussing that just after our theme song, so stay tuned. I don't know if you still remember the first time you were asked to do some formula, probably in Excel, and you were baffled a little bit about you don't know what formula is correct and what formula to put in there, or something called what we call now a function. You didn't know what function to use it, and the functions that I probably started with was the sum function because it looks like I was using the calculator, the average function, the mean probably, and then later on I started, moving from number-based functions to another functions. Well, in the world of data analysis, functions play a very, very vital role in extracting valuable insights from the raw data. This is why I believe that if we as analysts understand functions, our work will be actually even much more easier. So function help us in doing various calculations. We're doing manipulations, we're doing transformation on different data or data sets. On the previous one, we're talking about the different type of data. All those different type of data, whether it becomes, in tables or whatever the case is, functions help you to be able to handle those different data sets. In this episode, we're going to be reflecting on my time as an analyst and how long it took me to really, really understand the different types of function. And I do them into different type of groups. The first group, I call them the number functions. This is where your sum, your averages are all going in together because I'm dealing with numbers. Second one is called the text-based. Third one is the date function, and the fourth one is the Boolean function. So in that way, just give us a little bit more time so that we know when somebody asks you whatever the question, and if you know that the data that you're working with, you would know what functions are possible and which ones are not possible. So let's start with the first one, which is the number function. Number functions are quite essential for performing mathematical related operations, so on numerical data, that is. These functions are common ones, especially when we are looking at descriptive analysis. Remember, the descriptive analysis is when you have some data and then you just want to know what is the total of the data. You use the sum function. What is the average of the data? What is the mean of the data? All of that is called descriptive analysis, and using number-based function can actually quite help you with doing those things. They enable us to conduct calculations, aggregations, like I said, and comparison. So when you're doing variance analysis, when they ask you, can you give us variance analysis? We know that we can just do a difference function, or we can just do it the old school way where we press the equal sign, one cell or one data field minus another data field, and that's it. Sometimes we can do the multiply functions, or we can do it the old school way, like the calculator, equal sign, one cell, we do the star and then another cell. So it's up to you whether you want to do it the old school way, like you're doing it via a calculator, or you're making use of a function that's designed for calculating the difference, or that's calculated the product of the two or more numbers. So in so doing, number function includes the sum, which adds up a range of columns. That one I think we are more comfortable with. Almost everybody else is using it. And if besides that one, there's a second one called average, which calculates the average of a set of numbers. Max is also quite there as number third one, which returns the maximum value from the range of numbers. You just select the range of numbers and max will tell you that the maximum amount is this much. The sister or the brother on number 4 is the mean, which on the same range of numbers that you have selected, it just tells you which one is the minimum value from that range. Already when you select a few cells on number 5, you find something called count. So what it does is it just counts the number of cells in a range that contains numbers. So remember, at one point you can still do count with a condition. The one that just says count or the one that just says sum belongs to the number functions. Okay, number 2 for this one, we're looking at the text functions. So text functions are quite important, more especially when your field has got text inside. So you can be able to extract some text. Maybe ID number is in the middle of the text that you just got, or somebody just wrote a long email and they put in their telephone numbers inside. You can use out of that long email that you're seeing in your Excel workbook or in your SQL data set, you can actually run a function to go in and get your cell phone into it. That's where the text functions are coming in and are very useful when I wanted to manipulate or analyze contextual data. I often encountered situation where I needed to extract specific information from text, combining different text or different values. And the example of this ones that I used a lot was concatenate, which joins multiple text strings together. You can also do it the old school way where you say one cell plus another cell. It will Excel is can think that you already recognize that you're trying to add them together. But if you go to other software like in SQL, sometimes it doesn't work. So there's a concatenating function that does work. The second one that we can talk about that I use a lot is the len, L-E-N. The len determines the length of a text screen, especially if you looking to, say for instance, I give you a long name and you're just looking to say, okay, my text box will only take 5 characters, say for instance, and I'm giving you my name and it's got 6 characters, then you would know exactly which one will be cut off before you start to commit. The third one is either the left or the right, which is where you would, out of my name with 6 characters, you can say, okay, give me the first 3 characters or give me the last 3. This is where you're doing your left or your right. The fourth one would be find, where you can say, can you find a cell phone number from this text? Find a number or find anything else that starts with a 0 or start everything else that starts with a place. So find finds a position of a specific character or text within a text screen. Number 5 would be substitute. As much as you find, you can substitute. Say for instance, somewhere we decided to spell Johannesburg wrong. Instead of putting J-O, we put J-A. And we realize that, oh, we have made a mistake. So we can use substitute where we can replace specific text within a text screen with a new text. So text function become handy and invaluable when working with such data as customer or employee names. So if you want to find out what is their first name, what is second name, what is their last name, and they're all written together, this is where you can use text functions. If you want to find out branch details, where we have the branch name, branch location, and probably telephone numbers in one go, product descriptions, or any other textual information like that. So this is where I think this where text functions will be quite useful. Using the above functions will allow us as analysts to either focus on what matters the most by knowing exactly how to get there instead of trying the long route. In my earlier years, I've done quite crazy things to actually try to get the number that I wanted in there. At one point, I did it manually, one by one, one by one. Of course, it makes sense because I was only a financial administrator. I didn't know much about data. The third type that we're looking at is date functions. So date functions are designed to handle dates and perform various operations on dates. This type works well when the data field or the column has been formatted as a data column. Remember, most dates it gets converted into a number, and it's like a 6-character long number. It's only when you convert it and you format it as a date that it shows up as a date. Besides that, it's just a number. So if you are seeing a number that starts with a 4-6 something, you already could think that, okay, this number could totally become a date. And then when you convert it, that's where you start to see that, oh, is this a date? But with that, you can't just say, let's say, for instance, I'm saying, can you give me 30 days from the date that is in there? You can't just say, whatever cell, whatever that number that starts with 4 something, something plus 30 or plus 31 plus 30, whatever. Sometimes it doesn't add correctly. It might be adding years instead of adding the days. Sometimes it might be adding months. So this is where your date function comes in quite handy to actually do your own calculations from days, calculating date differences, calculating or grouping the days accordingly. Some of the functions that I totally like is the one that talks to today. So that one, even if you don't have a date that's whatever date is, you can just say equal sign today. And then once you get today's date or today's date code, you can, whatever you can say, minus the date that the application was done. If it's greater than 40 days or 45 days, write that the application was late, type of a thing. Second one is date add. A date add could be used if you wanted to add a few things onto your date. Date difference, month, is date, a year or month or day. You can also put it there. Date difference, which calculates the difference between the two dates. Another one is the end of month, EOM, EO month, which returns the last day of the month which we are working with. Works quite well if you have something called, we are working in, something as we are in July and we wanted to know what is the last date of the month of July. You can use that one. Like I said, also another one is like the weekdays, so that you can know which weekday it is. When you say, I have a date of 31st of June, you want to understand which weekday will it be, which week will it be on. And if you're doing it out of the 5 working day, which weekday will it be? So you can do a lot of analysis using the text base, depending on whatever is being asked from your side. So you just understand what is being asked on your side, and you come back and then you can use all whatever is date filled or date formatted columns. You can be able to use a lot of the date functions. The last ones that we're going to be looking at is the Boolean. So the Boolean are the functions that when they get stored or they get committed onto the database, they look the same. It's just like ones and zeros. It's a tick or no tick, depending on how you visualize it. But Boolean functions are used to evaluate logical conditions and return either something that is either true or is it false values. I often use Boolean functions to make comparison like test conditions or filter data based on specific criteria. I'll just go into detail a little bit because Boolean are so common to be used with all different type of functions. You can use Boolean with number functions where you're saying sum if there's a condition. So when you say sum, it will do the sum, but the if is the Boolean, so it comes back with either the condition is going to be true or false. If it's true, it will perform one action. If it's false, it will perform another action. So I think in that way, then it becomes easier. So examples of it, besides the if functions that we are doing, that you can combine it with sum, average, even left or whatever, if there's a condition. The other one that you can do is the and, or you can use the and functions, or you use the or function, so that you can say when condition 1 and condition 2 are true. So instead of saying if condition 1 is true and then you write another condition inside that one, you can just say you use the and function and then you put the first condition and then you put the second condition. And both of them are coming back true, then one function will go on. Like, so for instance, if my mic is black and I'm wearing a gray hoodie, then you can start the recording. That's where the sum or the count or whatever the case is can happen when you have a Boolean. Another one that you can look at is the not, which is the where you're looking at the opposite. So when you where you have a logical test that has got a given condition, so what you're doing is you're inverting that condition to say if the sun is on, and if you don't want to say if the sun is on, making it positive, you can say not the sun is on, then do this performance. It can work well sometimes when the true conditions, which is the and or the or, it takes much longer to write. Then the false condition could be easier to write, where you can use the not and not use the if or the and or the or. Then you can use the and. The count if is the nice one, that you're now measuring the two. Like I said, you're measuring the sum with the Boolean, but because there needs to be a condition there, they don't fall under number one, they fall under Boolean. This is why I said the Boolean is, for me, becomes the most important one to understand. As much as you've gone around and you understood the text and you understood the date function, once you start to go into a date with the condition, it's for us to understand the Boolean one. If there's an error, it's the Boolean one. If the cell is blanked, if it returns whatever number, that's Boolean one. And those are the most of us as analysts are not getting it correctly. But when you get your research question or you get your analysis request, normally it comes through in a form of a Boolean to say, can you find out if we have this thing? If we do get it, can you check the people that have been late? And so as we speak, sometimes we speak in a way of a Boolean condition. So if you take that Boolean and then you join it with your number functions, then you are able to write a formula that will work quite nicely. So Boolean functions are important when we want to compute values for decision making, data filtering, and creating logical statements in data analysis. They describe whether a condition is true or false. So that's just more or less. Personally, I would say if you're gonna start, leave the Boolean for later. Start with the number functions. Get comfortable with the sum, the average, the ifs. And once you are comfortable with the sum, with the average, with the ifs, go to the text ones, because they're more likely, can become a little bit confusing sometimes. But if you get used to lefting, going to the left and going to the right to get whatever text that you want, joining them together using concatenating, taking out a few letters from there, making sure that you join both the name and surname. You take out the middle name, you play around with those text base. And then after that, you go back to somebody's date of birth, you move it a century up, you move it a century down, and then you play around and then you start to see if you're comfortable with both the date, the text, and the number one. Then you can go back to them and start playing around, not just manually, but now playing around with a Boolean, so that you can say sum if, count if, do whatever the condition. If it's blank, if it's true, if it's false, if it's not, type of Boolean. So that's me. I hope you enjoyed this episode number 10. Just stay tuned for episode number 11, where we'll be discussing the data structures. It's quite important for us, as much as we learned about the functions to use. It's important as to us to understand how is data stored and how is it structured before we go ahead with our analysis. So thank you guys and ladies. See you on the next episode.